Morning, everybody. Thanks to Anika and colleagues for inviting me to really share some thinking from the world of unplanned cancer care. As Anika's mentioned, I'm the clinical lead for acute oncology across Merseyside and Cheshire Alliance, and also clinical lead for a rather novel urgent cancer care board that I'll briefly touch on in the slides. Could I have my next slide, please? Thank you. Just a couple of disclosures, really. Firstly, I am chair of a newly formed charitable society, the UK Acute Oncology Society, that aims to improve cancer care along the emergency journey. But perhaps most importantly, I wanted to emphasise I'm not an expert in digital innovation like the rest of my colleagues on the workshop today. I'm simply a clinician who's struggling to find solutions to some of the real challenges we face. And also, I think as a clinician, it can be quite difficult sometimes to navigate the rather nebulous world of innovation. So this is sort of my take on our journey over the last year. Could I have the next slide, please? Thanks. I guess just a little bit of background about my world. Much of the emphasis in cancer services is very much focused on, important targets, as John has mentioned, early diagnosis, elective targets at 28 days, 62 days. But actually, cancer patients universally have real problems accessing seamless and good, timely emergency care, which is very much the focus of our board. Cancer patients are more likely to contact NHS 111, primary care, and ultimately have a hospital admission compared to many other comorbidities. We're dealing with an aging population, multimorbidity, often complex needs and novel therapeutics that involve a whole array of drugs that are unpronounceable to many of our colleagues. In the world of acute oncology, we've made a lot of progress supporting patients and professionals inside hospitals, but we understand the need moving forward to support the wider urgent care system and our patients in terms of opportunities for a more proactive approach with admission avoidance and same-day emergency care. And historically, there has been a real disconnect between services that deliver elective cancer care and our colleagues in the urgent care system who pick up many of the complications, that disconnect between centres, district general hospitals, community and hospitals, which has made this a challenging space to work. And really a real sense that emergency care is everybody's problem, but nobody's responsibility. Next slide, please. So just to put some local context, with support from Matt Millen, we carried out an evaluation of emergency pathways in 2020, looking in the North Mersey area, and we found some quite frightening data and patient and professional experience. We reaffirmed cancer patients are frequent users of urgent care. 5% of emergency department attendances have cancer, but that translates into a 15% admission, which is actually, when looked at from another point of view, an 80% conversion rate to admission, higher than many other comorbidities. Similarly, there's a very high ambulance conveyance rate and a real sense in the system that professionals are not confident in managing cancer patient complications, and it's often easy to admit the patient. That translates into poor experience for both professionals and patients, poor coordination across the system, and ultimately we recognise there are few alternatives for patients and indeed for professionals other than to use the emergency department as a gateway into the system. And so the whole system is very much reactive rather than proactive, and as part of that, our cancer hotlines that support chemotherapy patients are not yet connected adequately into the wider transformation that's happening with NHS 111 and the concept of moving patients into bookable slots. And underpinning all of these is a constant workforce challenge in terms of oncology provision across the system. Next slide, please. So what we appreciate is that any solution to our challenge has to be system-wide. And indeed, many of the problems we face sit across disciplines, but also sit across organisations, whether that be hospital, tertiary specialist centres or community. Next slide, please. So this slide really just tries to summarise our brief journey in the past 12 months in developing a collaboration with our colleagues across the Alliance and the Innovation Agency. And so approximately a year ago, we were able to use the evidence base we have to fund and create a rather unique collaboration, the Urgent Cancer Care Board, hosted by Clatterbridge Cancer Centre, but importantly, a true collaborative with the Merseyside and Cheshire Cancer Alliance and the Urgent and Emergency Care Network across Merseyside and Cheshire. So the first time a forum that brought emergency services and cancer together. And it was during that journey that we had a chance discussion with the Innovation Agency, a personal approach concerning a very specific digital innovation looking at temperature monitoring. And really at the time, as a clinician, it was very difficult to gain traction with clinical colleagues, busy day jobs, the challenge of COVID, and really we found it difficult to move forward on a very specific isolated issue on its own. However, after further discussions with the agency, we took the opportunity for the agency to present their work and opportunity to our board. And really there were three key themes to that discussion. The Innovation Agency's skill set and knowledge in building and really maintaining these system partnerships that you've heard of in the introduction. Also helping us to understand the challenge we faced within the urgent care system, how we vocalise and socialise that, and ultimately how we start to test some of the innovation and look towards spread and adoption at scale across at least the regional network. And it's really a story of our journey over this past year that has brought us to this first workshop. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this table really outlines the Innovation Agency's view of our challenge, and it was really a helpful starting point for us to document and describe a narrative about our current challenges across the urgent care system, and more importantly, start to align that with some of the opportunities that the Innovation Agency could bring forward. And so an opportunity using digital innovation to increase anticipatory care by reducing deterioration, identifying deterioration at an earlier time point and before the ED episode. So opportunities for remote monitoring, for instance, the potential for using point of care testing early in the pathway. But also starting to think about how some of the technology might help some of the workforce challenges with the use of virtual health systems, telehealth, virtual rotas for a small workforce that's attempting to cover a challenging acute oncology services across the region, and ultimately how that team, through virtual technology and the use of some of the other digital innovations you'll hear about, can start to sort of support this urgent care challenge. Could I have the next slide, please? So I won't discuss this in any great detail, but this was really the first opportunity to identify and share some of the digital innovation in the emergency care space. And it was really a starting point for us to start to consider how the Innovation Agency and the Urgent Cancer Care Board can start to work with some of these key partners on some aspects of our pathway. Could I have the next slide, please? So where are we now? So we've built an important collaborative. We've identified a need not only in urgent care, but across the wider cancer system, hence the offer of the workshops both today and moving over the next 12 months. But we have now started to focus down on some very specific proposals. The first is the benefit and potential for telemonitoring in cancer patients to identify early deterioration in community. And I'm pleased to say we have 2 pilots that are due to start in the coming months, focused on a specific cohort of patients with lung cancer. Lung cancer patients represent the cohort that are most likely to be admitted into hospital with cancer diagnosis. But we also have a similar telemonitoring approach in a pilot looking at patients receiving new novel therapies, so-called immunotherapy. And critically, this pilot work has helped us develop our first collaboration with the Mersey Care Hub and the potential of the Cancer Centre through the Mersey Care Hub and digital monitoring linking into the much wider system of urgent care outward and beyond Clatchbridge as a single organisation. So that's our key piece of work over the coming months, but we're very much also prioritising the need to review, modernise and improve some of the helpline work that we've already started, both in terms of work that's started to be piloted at St Helens and Knowsley Hospital on a helpline aimed directly at the population for early detection of cancer and symptoms when there's difficulty accessing primary care, but also how we might use some digital innovation in supporting our regional cancer hotline, both in terms of triage, artificial intelligence, as well as incorporating virtual consultation. Could I have the next slide, please? So this is my last slide, really, and it's an attempt just to sort of summarise the journey for the last 12 months in terms of a clinician trying to make progress in a difficult area. So it seems to me, as John has explained, that digital innovation is one of a number of areas that may offer some real-world solutions to some of the real challenges, particularly workforce continuity coordination that we face in cancer. As I've mentioned already, any pathway redesign or digital innovation we introduce will only really be successful if it's introduced across the system, and that we have a truly system-wide and as a minimum region-wide agreement to take on that new change and that new innovation. And the relationship we've created between the Cancer Alliance, the Innovation Agency and the Urgent Cancer Care Board has certainly placed us in a very strong position to understand the opportunity, to identify, share innovation, and ultimately to test and scale up some of these ideas. And on a very personal level, I think it's highlighted to me as a clinical quality group lead at an alliance level, the potential for those groups of clinicians and multi-professional groups to come together to use that space to describe and identify innovation opportunity. I'll stop there, thank you.